What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Unlock Your Potential. I'm your host, Francesco Bartolillo, and it's been a minute. I'm excited to be back. We took a couple months off for various different reasons, but we are back, and today's episode is going to be great. I'm going to pick up kind of where I left off a few months back on a solo episode, which is going to be that topic of, discipline and willingness to take chances and make mistakes and that sort of thing. I think it's a really important topic. I think there's a lot in there that can help, people who are facing all different types of struggles and also just in all different facets of life, whether that's sport, whether that's business, whether that's family, whether that's just general health and well-being. I think there's a little bit of something in there for everyone. I'm looking forward to it. Let's get started. So as most of you probably know or remember, our solo episodes are essentially an opportunity for me to share some of the areas that I'm passionate about with you, stuff that I've learned through, whether that's my own research and reading and podcasts and that sort of thing. And I've listened to a ton of podcasts recently around this topic, which is why I have this here, because I tend to try and keep notes as much as possible. So for those of you who are on YouTube and seeing me scrolling, these are kind of some of the notes that I've kept as I'm listening to these podcasts throughout, the last couple weeks. So a couple areas I want to touch on and a couple of things that will help remind me. I will also put a link in the show notes to these podcasts that I'm referring to. A large majority of them are from Diary of a CEO with Stephen Bartlett and his guests. I find that podcast incredibly helpful. He's got incredible guests on there, whether that's business professionals, athletes, healthcare workers, doctors, scientists, whatever it is, tons of different guests that are, just world-renowned experts in their fields and can share this knowledge and, have the research and the data to back up everything they're saying. So a lot of what I'm saying, if I do refer to studies or that sort of thing, come from these podcasts, not studies that I've necessarily done myself, but things that I've heard, these experts talk about and then have gone on and kind of read about and learned more about or questioned if there were things that I didn't necessarily believe right away, that sort of thing. So, we're going to kind of tackle this topic of discipline and mastery and failure all in one while referring to some of the great things I've found in a couple podcasts. And so right off the bat, I'm going to kind of reference the episode of Diary CEO with Ryan Holiday. And Ryan Holiday in this episode talks a ton about discipline, which was an area that we kind of talked about in the last episode, but also something that I really want to elaborate on. So before we can really go any further, we have to define what discipline is. There are a ton of different definitions out there for discipline, and I've kind of looked at a couple to figure out which one I like best. And I'm not really sure I'd necessarily settled on one, but I came to the conclusion that all the definitions of discipline incorporate two aspects. And the first is the idea of doing something now, and typically it's something you don't want to do now or something difficult now. And the second aspect is for a reward or a benefit that may come later. And they use the word may because it's not guaranteed. And so I think Ryan Holiday's definition was the ability to do hard stuff now for an uncertain benefit way down the line. And I think that's a great way to look at it, because for anybody who's committed to, doing some type of, daily routine or task that they believe is healthy or beneficial to them, a lot of times you don't see the benefit right away. And I'm going to use myself as an example. I think my discipline has been poor the last couple months, which is why we haven't done an episode for so long. But I look at something like my, my daily habit of doing a cold plunge or going to the gym in the morning. The cold plunge, you don't necessarily see the benefits that come from it right away, but you continue to do it on a daily basis, and it helps you. And when I stop doing it is when I notice that, it's affecting me in certain ways. Or going to the gym, you don't go to the gym, do one set of bench press, and all of a sudden your chest is looking bigger. It's just not how it works. But it's the discipline to say, I'm going to go every single day, and I'm going to work out, and I'm going to work out, and I'm going to work out, and eventually somewhere way down the line, I'm going to see the health benefits, the physical benefits, like the optics and that sort of thing. So it's just that discipline to do those things over and over again. And what I kind of wanted to touch on that or build on that a bit was, again, I'm going to go back to, my cold plunge. For anybody who's followed me on social media, it's something I love doing. I'm passionate about it. And I did it for a long time. And then a couple months back, I stopped doing it for whatever reason it was. I don't even actually know if I have a reason. And I noticed quite quickly that my ability to make difficult decisions throughout the day became worse and worse. And at the time, I didn't really realize it, but I think it was a domino effect from the cold plunge and from not going to the gym in the morning and from snoozing the alarm. And so Ryan Holiday refers to this story that I think was really great way of explaining it. He's talking about a story about a father and a son who go on a camping trip. And basically on this trip, they promise to split everything 50-50. So they're going to do all the building the tent 50-50, the fishing, the gathering, the cooking, everything. They're going to split this trip. It's a 50-50 trip between the son and the dad. And then one evening, they're having hot chocolate, and the dad gives the son a little bit more hot chocolate. And the son gets upset. He says, "Dad, you promised we were going to split everything 50-50. And then he says, if we can't keep the little promises, how are we going to keep the big ones? And I really like this story because it's something that, maybe in that example might be a little bit extreme, but it's this idea that the little promises we tell ourselves, the little promises that we keep, those are the foundation. That's how we build towards the big runs. And so I think from a discipline perspective, the little challenges, the little tasks that we keep doing over and over again help us. So when it comes to these bigger ones, these bigger challenges, the ones that require a lot of discipline, we have the foundation. And so it goes back to that idea of discipline being a muscle that you build. But my perspective on this has kind of changed, and it's from that podcast that it changed. Is I used to view it as discipline being a muscle that you build. So the more disciplined you are, the stronger that muscle gets. And the less disciplined you are and the less things you do that require discipline, the weaker that muscle gets. But I'm actually going to almost flip it on its head and say this muscle can be built in two directions. Positive in favor of discipline and negative against your discipline. Meaning, every time you choose to snooze the alarm, every time you choose not to go to the gym, every time you choose not to go in the cold plunge, every time you choose to eat that piece of candy, or break your fast or whatever it is, you are building the lack of discipline muscle. You're building the muscle that goes against your discipline. So building your discipline muscle is not only important because it's allowing you to do the more difficult things and the bigger challenges, the bigger tasks, but it's also making you strong enough to not give in to those little things, which I think is crucially important because I think that's the foundation for, again, waking up in the morning, you don't snooze your alarm, and then you do your routine, whether that's a cold plunge or whatever it is, and you go do your workout, and then all of a sudden later in the afternoon you have this big decision that you have to make, or you have this thing that you have to do that you really don't want to do, but you're already in this mode of I've completed so much today, I am somebody who is disciplined, and you have this self-belief. You're going to be more inclined to have the discipline to then go and do that next thing. And that's something that I firmly believe, because over the last 4 months, I experienced the lack of discipline, and I experienced how not keeping the little promises, not having the little pieces of discipline really negatively impacted my bigger picture thing. So, when I came to the end of the day and I had to record a podcast episode, I didn't have the discipline to sit down and say, okay, I'm going to do this even though I don't really want to. And even though, maybe 100 or 1,000 people might see this, I just don't have the discipline to do it. And that's a drastic difference from, when I was doing all the little things to then, getting home at the end of the day, being tired and saying, hey, no, I'm going to do this because I know down the line, it might benefit me in a certain way. And the best thing is it might not. And if it is only 100 people who ever see this, that's fantastic, because I hope it helps those 100 people. So I think it's just basically, again, that idea of can we have the discipline And can we build it through little tasks repeatedly done over and over again that help us grow and grow that discipline muscle over and over again, and making those bigger, more challenging tasks a little bit easier. And then there was actually one story that I did want to share as well, which is one of my favorite Kobe Bryant stories. And he's in an interview, and he's talking about a contract with himself. So he's talking about how he's going into summer camp, and basically said, I'm doing this summer program by myself, and there's no negotiating. I've made a contract with myself, and I no longer can negotiate once that contract is signed. And he talks about the stories you're going to tell yourself in this narrative of, you're a couple weeks in, you've trained, whatever it is, 21 days straight, and all of a sudden you're like, you know what, I've worked hard enough, I need a day off, or, it's probably better for my body, or whatever it is. And he just goes, nope, there's no negotiating. If this is what we said we're doing it. No ands, ifs, or buts. And I think we all fall trapped to this. I know I do it all the time, where I said I'm going to wake up and go to the gym at 6 a.m. and then all of a sudden the alarm rings, and I had a crappy sleep, and I only slept a couple hours, and I start telling myself this story, right, of, I only slept a couple hours. It might not be good for me to go to the gym. I probably need the sleep, or I'm going to be tired for the rest of the day. And all of a sudden you let this story run wild, and you convince yourself that you made the right decision. When in reality, what's happening in that moment is you're negotiating with your past self, and your past self had your best interest in mind, whereas your current self is tired, is lacking discipline, and doesn't want to do the difficult thing now that's going to benefit you later. So I just thought that was a really great example of, Kobe talking about the discipline he has, and it kind of lines up with, making the sacrifice now for some benefit later. And so I kind of want to segue from that into this idea of, failure and making mistakes and building confidence from that and that sort of thing. And so, again, this is a topic we've covered a bunch in the past, and we've talked about it from a growth mindset perspective, which is fantastic because obviously you guys know I love that. But I want to focus a little bit less on necessarily the growth mindset piece. Not that it's not important, but just really focusing in on the idea of, repeated failure over and over again in order to get better and to grow. And so it actually goes to another podcast I listened to with Adam Grant. He was on Diary of a CEO as well. Again, in the show notes, I'll have a link or something that will help you find that episode. But he has this great quote in the episode. He's talking about when he used to be a diver. I think it was in college or something like that. And he said, let me actually pull it here just so I get it right. He said, "You don't get enough confidence to take the leap, but you get confidence by taking the leap." In other words, you take the leap, you fail, you build experience through it, and you do it again, and you fail, and you learn, and you fail, and you learn, until eventually you get it, and then now you have the confidence because you're better than you were before. And so basically what he's saying is, you're never just going to all of a sudden get the confidence to do something without doing it at all, right? So if you're a photographer, or you want to start a business, or you want to be a teacher, or whatever it is, until you actually go out and do the thing, you're not going to have the confidence in doing it because you don't have experience. You haven't learned, right? And so he's referencing, this was his reference to diving, was, until he actually attempts the dive and fails at it, and then attempts it again and then learns from that, and eventually gets it, then he's going to have the confidence, and then he's going to be better, and then he's going to move on to the next thing anyways. And it's this constant cycle of fail, learn, succeed, push yourself more. And he talks about this optimal zone of push, where you should be failing at least 15 to 20% of the time regularly in whatever you're doing. Otherwise, you're not pushing yourself. You're not getting better, because if you're not failing at least 15 to 20% of the time, there's no growth happening. And so, yeah, I just really liked that example, because again, he's sharing this idea that failure is not something that should be feared, but rather it should be encouraged. It should be exciting. I should be wanting to fail, because I know that if I fail, I'm learning something, and if I'm not failing, I'm not learning at all. And I think that goes for everything, right? For anybody, I know it's easy to relate to sports because for athletes, you're forced to fail all the time, but it's, I think, super relevant in business as well. Like entrepreneurs, business owners, just not even necessarily business owners, just people working in an organization. You're never going to have the confidence to pitch an idea to your boss, or have the confidence to ask for a raise, or have the confidence to speak up when you think something's not right in your organization until you do it. And then once you do it, you'll get some form of feedback, and then you'll learn from that, and then you'll do it again, and then you get some form of feedback, and you learn from that. And eventually you're going to have the confidence to do these things because you've learned through your failures, you've learned through your attempts. And so time on task is going to teach you to be better. And there's this great story. I know that I believe Adam Grant actually refers to it in the podcast. I know Alex Hormozy as well, who is one of my favorite business people to listen to, talks about this story as well. And it's the story of the pottery teacher. And he has a class of 30 students, and he splits his students into two groups, A and B. Group A is going to complete as many different pottery assignments or tasks as possible throughout the semester. That's their goal, is just create as much as possible. Don't worry about quality, just create. The other group is going to pick one thing to create for the whole semester, and they're going to work on that one thing and make it as good as possible. The goal is to make it perfect. And at the end of the semester, it comes together, and he takes all these projects, every single one that was created on Group A, and then all the ones that were created in Group B, and all of the best ones came from Group A, the group that created a bunch. And the best part was that some of them weren't even the last ones that those group members created, but the third or fourth or fifth one. Meanwhile, Group B, none of them made the top 10. And so it's kind of hitting home that idea of quantity breeds quality. The more you do of something, the better you get at it. And the higher amount of repetition you get, the more confidence you're going to get in doing that thing. And so I think that's just a great, another story that really, for me, it really emphasizes and hits home on the fact of we have to be willing to put in the work. We have to have the discipline to do something over and over again, even though we might not see a benefit right away. And we know that in the end, that repetition, that discipline, those failures and those lessons learned are going to help us be better somewhere down the line. And we don't know when, we don't know even necessarily if, but we believe it's going to make us better, and that's going to make the difference. And so I thought that was, again, that episode really, they just talked about some great pieces about how these different elements of discipline and how these different elements of embracing failure can really help you. So I highly recommend checking them out. Again, those are all Diary of a CEO. I will, of course, link them in the show notes, and hopefully you guys can find some pieces that help you there. So that kind of wraps up today's. I wanted to keep it kind of short and sweet. Just wanted to hit home on a topic that I really love, and share some of the knowledge that I've found over the last little while here, because there's some pieces that really helped me there and helped get me back on track. I do also have some great guests lined up for you guys. Some that I think are going to be, timely with some of the stuff that's going on in the world right now. Some that are going to be similar to previous guests we've had in terms of, athletes and excellence and that sort of thing. But yeah, I'm excited to share the guests with you. I'm excited to do a couple more of these individual ones down the line. If there's any topics that you would like me to cover, I would love to hear it. Just, either shoot me a message, put it in the comments. If you're watching this on YouTube, throw it in the comment section there. Or if you're listening to this on, Apple Music or Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast, put it in the comments. Of course, leave a review if you can. But yeah, I'm really excited to get going on this again. I hope there was some stuff in there today that helped motivate you, inspire you. I hope it encourages you to listen to these and other podcasts around the topic. I hope there's something in there that will help you unlock your potential. Until next time, we will see you guys later.